everybody. This is Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Benjamin Netanyahu visited Washington, D.C., and boy, was it an intriguing visit if there ever was one. So let me just set the stage here, Erik. Clearly, this was supposed to be the story of the week, but Netanyahu's timing was a bit off because we just finished the Republican convention.
Assassination attempt. Joe Biden withdraws.
Biden withdraws. Kamala Harris becomes the choice.
And then Joe Biden kind of disappears.
Yeah.
I think even how he did it was strange compared to how Lyndon Johnson resigned, came before the American people right away. But sending it on a personal letter, not White House, nothing official, from a Twitter account, odd. Very odd.
And 2 days prior, a statement was issued from his campaign in his name saying, I'll be back in the campaign trail next week. I'll be fighting to win.
And well, even his deputy campaign manager the day before, like full steam.
Something flipped. I mean, somebody got to him on Saturday, and I think money had a lot to do with it. They were basically saying, money's gone. It's dried up. You have no money to run, nowhere to go, no path to win. Or something else.
Or something else. What was promised?
What was promised?
Is there a golden parachute?
There's a golden parachute. That's what I predicted. You know, he's going to pardon his whole family. There'll be a golden parachute waiting for him. But anyway, let's move on. So Netanyahu comes in and not really getting the attention that he typically would get with a state visit like this. Lots of Democrats were no-show at the speech before a joint session of Congress, including Kamala Harris, the president of the Senate. While the speech was going on, oh, and by the way, Netanyahu brought with him family members of hostages in Gaza, which is pretty interesting because those folks want a ceasefire now so they can get their loved ones back as soon as possible. So joint session of Congress, all the trappings of such an event. Down the street at Union Station, the pro-Hamas protesters
burning American flags.
Took the 3 American flags in front of Union Station down and replaced it with the Palestinian flag.
Yeah, where's the Metro PD on doing this? Do we just surrender certain territory to alien organizations at will? I don't get it.
Well, on the day before his speech, hundreds of these protesters invaded the Capitol building.
Yes.
Aren't they supposed to be put in the D.C. gulag and
held on charges for years? Yeah,
right,
run their cell phone IDs and let's figure out who that was, who disrupted Congress.
Absolutely. So the power dynamics here, though, are fascinating to me.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
Yeah, exactly. So but this is a very important speech for Netanyahu. He presented it in the U.S. when it was prime time in Israel. Clearly, there's domestic politics that are at play here. Let me throw to you a couple of remarks that he made before and after the speech. First of all, he said, I say at the outset that this will be a process. Unfortunately, it's not all at once. There will be stages, but I believe that we can move a deal forward and maintain the means of pressure that can bring about the release of the other hostages. And then he said, in no circumstances am I willing to give up on victory over Hamas. If we let up, we will be in danger from all of Iran's evil axis. I wanted to get your perspective on Netanyahu's speech, the power dynamics, what's taking place right now, the pressure he's under to strike a deal, and the way he's holding out.
They are clearly not coming from a great position right now because they walked into the fight that Hamas wanted to give them. Hamas does the super inflammatory attack on October 7. They take a bunch of hostages and they draw the IDF into an urban fight with a whole lot of tunnels. And the bombing and the urban combat that resulted in what they've done so far has certainly given them a big black eye around the world. Egypt, the Arab Street, even the Christians, the Coptics in Egypt are really against the peace deal that Egypt has with Israel. They want Egypt to invade Gaza. So the images, real, fake, whatever they are, there's certainly been a lot of hostages killed. Sad that happens when this kind of urban combat results. It's given the IDF a big black eye. And so the fact that they're even now, July, after, we're 3 months away from a 1-year anniversary of a Gaza attack. Think of that. And they still haven't annihilated Hamas because they didn't think about it very clearly in how they picked that fight. So, and they're at a, even on the northern border with Iran, 50% of the loitering munitions launched by the Iranians are getting through and hitting targets in Israel. That's a big problem. So for all the amazing technology that they have, the high altitude ballistic missile intercepts or the Iron Dome shooting down incoming rockets, cheap drones flying at low altitude are scoring badly. And I think that's should be a great wake-up call for every industrialized, wealthy society that spent a lot of money on their military. It's warfare has changed. It has made a big step change forward, and to avoid it, to ignore that, do so at your great peril.
So you're saying the Iron Dome was built for a different era of warfare, correct?
Well, it's built for a certain kind of weapon system. It's designed for incoming rockets or missiles coming at, we'd say, medium altitude. But the low altitude cheap drone coming at 100 feet or 500 feet off the ground or even nap of the earth, those are getting through. 50% of them are. Big problem.
So,
and those are also guided. That's hitting with precision. The Grad rockets, the 107s that Iron Dome was designed for, those are just fired at an area. But precision drones are causing mayhem even for the much vaunted, technically capable IDF.
And if you're saying Israel is giving Hamas the fight that they wanted, you're questioning their operational approach?
Yes. And perhaps I'm jaded on that because we offered a different solution to flood the heck out of it and not to, of course, the crazies always mistake my comments. Flooding the tunnels in Gaza is designed to protect civilians. There are no innocent civilians down in the tunnels other than hostages. Flooding the tunnels would have destroyed the weapons caches. It would have prevented them being used for maneuver. And 3, it would have made Hamas move the hostages because dead hostages are of no use to Hamas. They would have been a forcing function. Turning Gaza into a duck impoundment would have ended up saving a lot of civilians. It would have saved a lot of the buildings overhead and resulted in significantly less bombing, less energetics being unleashed on the place. But again, that's not what the IDF did. And they're still messing around with Hamas and hostages 9 months after, and no end in sight.
What's your impression of the status of combat today, right now? They've been successful in the south of Gaza at this point, but the job's not done.
Job's not done. No, and all the smuggling tunnels that are still coming from the Egypt side, those are not all cut yet. So it's the IDF of today is not the IDF of 73 or of 67, and they're still having a lot of problems. One of their biggest sources of casualties is if they wire up an area to blow, they're trying to take down some kind of fortifications or structures. The biggest losses of life have been because they've been tying the explosives together with troops still in the area. So if an enemy shoots an RPG, it clacks off the explosive and it takes the whole field of explosives down and killed 10 to 12 Israelis at a time.
Well, as you know, Benjamin Netanyahu is an excellent orator. So I want to take a quick look at a clip from his speech before the joint session of Congress.
Okay.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza. They might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC.
So, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's terrific in a circumstance like this. The absurdity of these protesters who are BLM, Antifa, they are, a part of the transgenderism movement.
Gays and trannies for Palestine. Yeah, it's pure madness.
Gays for Gaza.
Yes.
Chickens
they
for KFC.
They would not last long there.
It was a memorable line, and these same people were down the street he referenced protesting. What I'm interested in here is, what does this mean for this presidential election? We are weeks out from the convention in Chicago. Those protesters are going to be there by the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, protesting what has taken place with the Biden-Harris administration.
In a town not known for great law enforcement anymore. I mean, great officers, they're fine,
right.
But horrible leadership, horrible mayor, a lot of murder, a lot of mayhem. I think you might have a repeat of the '68 Democratic Convention and all the shenanigans that went with that.
But isn't this the massive conflict in 2024 for the left? That they have yielded so much, the Democrat Party has yielded to the extreme far left progressives. Joe Biden was sold to us as a moderate, right? Scranton Joe. And yet he bought into the entire far left agenda. Kamala Harris was the most liberal U.S., even though the media is now trying to scrub this from the records, the most liberal U.S. senator. So they are so conflicted.
Stepdaughter, a pro-Hamas activist of Kamala Harris. So yeah, it literally is in her family.
Well, and ironically, so after the speech, the next day, Netanyahu met with Joe Biden at the White House. He met privately with Kamala Harris. I predicted this. I knew she was going to go into a meeting with him and come out saying, "Well, I was strict with him. I gave him a piece of my mind about humanitarian aid to Gaza and ending this conflict and entering a ceasefire." And in fact, you got to hear this. Jack Posobiec, who is a very big conservative influencer, who you know very well, he posted this, and this is referencing the Kamala Harris meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, in which she was persuading him on the ceasefire. So Jack says, "Just her Bibi laughed in Kamala's face and blurted an audible no when she tried to get stern with him on a ceasefire by October." Oh, that's convenient timing. By October. She got visibly nervous and just laughed back awkwardly. I need your reaction to that.
Laughed back awkwardly at Kamala Harris? That seems to be consistent, because that's the consistent laugh. Look, I'm sure Bibi is under huge pressure to wage a campaign until Hamas is fully defeated. He's kind of toast electorally with a very right-wing bloc that supports him. They want their hostages back and they want Hamas defeated. They've not been very clever about accomplishing that goal. And so the jury's out on whether that's all going to come together as they hope.
Although, Netanyahu's smart, he showed up despite this shifting dynamics here politically in the U.S.
Is he going to be there? Is he going to resign? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He showed up. He met at the White House with Joe Biden. By the way, no greeting for him on his arrival to the U.S., which takes us back to the Obama era, when Obama had Netanyahu come in the back door of the White House, if you recall.
Yeah.
It's the same dynamics, right? The same total disrespect. But nonetheless, Netanyahu's wise because he's playing his cards right. And he knows how important that is for him politically in Israel, that he demonstrates his position on the world stage with our ally, his ally, the U.S.
Key, his ally, the U.S. They have burned off a lot of allies. They've burned off a lot of goodwill by not being very clever in how they waged this war against Hamas. And they
I want to hear more about that. Tell me what kind of allies alliances that's affected.
Look, the fact that the French disinvited the Israelis from their last defense show, the fact that the European support for Israel has really diminished, the fact that Israel's credibility in the Middle East has greatly diminished. And not just credibility with governments, but the rage on the street against Israel. It's not been this bad in decades. So this is a problem for them. They go from being a victim to waging a campaign not very wisely, and now they're suffering. They're worse off than they were the day before the attack.
Which goes to show what.
And honestly, in this, to me, it comes back to Netanyahu's leadership, that he has not guided the country in a very wise path in fixing this problem.
But viewers on Off Leash learn a lot from you. And so this demonstrates that strategic operations matter a lot.
Military victories drive diplomatic breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Be much easier for, if Israel had wrapped this up 4 or 5 months ago, very different equation.
So the most important, in my mind, the most important meeting that Benjamin Netanyahu had this week was with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. If you recall, Netanyahu burned the bridge with Donald Trump because he was all too quick to place a congratulatory call to Joe Biden after the November election in 2020, where, as far as Donald Trump was concerned, that outcome was not determined yet.
Yep.
That burned a bridge. This is a very, very important reunion, I think, for Netanyahu and Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Tell me what you think about what they'll be discussing in that meeting.
Well, that's the thing. Countries don't have relationships. People have relationships. And if Bibi stepped in it by shifting his flag way too quickly, Donald Trump remembers those things, I think. So, look, Israel has stepped in it in a lot of ways, and they are they need to get their act together.
Well, and Donald Trump, always as shrewd as ever, had received a letter after the assassination attempt from the head of the Palestinian Authority, posted on social with a note saying, thanks for your concern. I'll look forward to forging peace in the Middle East. Just the fact that he's posting that from the Palestinian leader just shows how shrewd Donald Trump is.
And that he also, in his speech at the convention, said, we expect our hostages home. Because that's something most people don't realize, that there are still American citizens that are considered hostage in Gaza, kind of like Jimmy Carter had. And an old mentor of mine, Richard Allen, was the first national security advisor, and he was sent after the election in 1980 to warn the mullahs, if the U.S. hostages are not released by the time Reagan makes it to the White House, then we're going to, I don't know, take you back to the Stone Age or turn you into glass or something extremely primordial.
Yeah. No, the message was sent before Reagan even took on. Naturally, it was 12:01 p.m. on January 20th, 1981, that the hostages left Iranian airspace. So, in the last smite to Jimmy Carter, it was when Reagan was president that they actually left Iran.
Well, Jimmy Carter, still eligible for another 4 years. They could run him again.
Nobody considered that. Exit question here, Erik. We obviously saw some action on the part of Israel against in Yemen against the Houthis. Tell us what you know.
Because the Houthis have now been firing weapons, launching drones that even struck in Tel Aviv, hitting targets, and more weapons more to follow. So the Israeli Air Force struck back and struck at some of the Houthi military targets. Again, military victories drive diplomatic breakthroughs. Nobody's put the Houthis in their place, and they will continue to flex up until someone helps them readdress their thinking.
Is this something the United States should have done before Israel had to?
The Navy has fired $1 billion worth of missiles. The replacement cost would be $5 or $6 billion, but they've been a lot of noise and little fury in terms of retaliatory, in terms of delivering consequences to Houthi leadership to make them rethink what they're doing. So no, nobody's done anything to them really yet.
Well, look, the fate of Israel, I think, is in the balance here, not just because of Iran and its proxies, but also with this presidential election coming up. So we've got a lot to talk about in the next 101 days. That's it for us here on Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Until next time, thanks.